Well, good evening, everyone. Another night of unrest
displays of racism exploding into a deadly act of domestic terror. Tonight, we examine the hateful groups that now appear to be banding together. Why are they now emerging from the shadows, emboldened and growing in numbers? Here's ABC's Eva Pilgrim.
This is dozens of police officers in riot gear.
This was the scene in the liberal college town of Charlottesville, Virginia on Friday, reminiscent of images from a dark American past. Hundreds of white nationalists from across the country descended upon the University of Virginia's campus ahead of a planned demonstration to protest the removal of the statue of Confederate General Robert E. Lee.
Lives matter! White lives matter!
They quickly clashed with counter-protesters, people from both sides ready to fight. It would be the start of a bloody 24 hours. Tonight, as division seemed wider than ever, President Trump returned to New York City.
What's your name? What's my name? Change to the OG. The one I say Lynchburg, y'all say Virginia. Lynchburg. Yeah. When I say Lynchburg, y'all say Virginia. Lynchburg. When I say Lynchburg, y'all say Virginia. Lynchburg.
Meanwhile, tonight, anyone not in their homes past 8 o'clock and not on official business or an essential employee will be stopped by Lynchburg police. City leaders say that they will be enforcing this curfew. Now, this comes after 2 nights of peaceful protests that turned violent.
Lynchburg, Virginia, yeah. Lynchburg, VA, till I die, yeah. Lynchburg, Virginia, yeah. Lynchburg, VA.
Well, good evening once again. Tonight, anyone not in their homes by 8 could face consequences from police in Lynchburg.
This comes after 2 days of peaceful protests in the city turned violent. In the past few days, we've seen businesses hit hard by vandalism. 10 News reporter Magdala Lusant joins us live in Lynchburg, where protesters have gathered. Magdala, what are you seeing right now?
Well, right now, Brittany, there are a lot of people here at this intersection, Wards Road, and there's a reason for that, and that's because Liberty University is across the street. Here are the protesters spread out throughout the intersection right now. You've got people across the street, some in the median, some right here close to us with signs that say Black Lives Matter.
SCHBURG, VA, my hometown, I'm born and raised, I know history. Now history.
I got you, because I seen all of it, and I got it all recorded right now. You just sit up there and aggressively done hit my brother in the head repeatedly 6 times. When both of y'all got him, it don't take but 2 people to do that. So I got the right, I got my First Amendment. This man.
I'll put on for my city, don't care with me. Move swiftly, in downtown with fam. Y'all know how it's going down. L's to the sky, man, they say that I'm a city boy, I'm a country boy. T-Hill raised me, y'all watch the streets, they crazy. Rats walking freely, while the real right saying free me. Middle fingers to the KKK, dead them trying to hang me. The government can't change me. Freedom of speech, that's the time I speak, father, they gon' kill me. You feel me? Problem not, your third eye, your mind closed. The system trying to take control, if we take control, but they don't want that. They don't want that, that's why they lock us in, go to school, learn nothing but how to be a citizen. It's not a game, so take it win, so we can lose, so we can prove that we're not. We'll build the top to the cast and drop. Fuck y'all, let's suck my cock. Lynchburg, Virginia.
What happened was, once they started doing that, police were calling or giving their warnings to tell people to back away. People were throwing water bottles, even fireworks at the police officers. And there were people there who were telling them, don't do that, don't do that. This is supposed to be a peaceful protest. This is supposed to be a peaceful protest. But there weren't people who were listening. And so that's when the tear gases came. And when they did come, we will say we got caught up in the middle of that. It was scary for both myself and our photographer, Jeff Perzan. I know Jessica caught a little wind of it at the beginning, and we were talking to each other on the phone. But at 1 minute, we could, the feeling of the tear gas for us, you hear that more of that popping sound. That's more tear gas they're deploying out there. But
and Magdala, we do want to mention too, there's live tear gas is being fired right now. They're trying to disperse these crowds. They've had multiple warnings telling people to go home, and so they're doing these other strategies, employing these other tactics to try to get people to get out of this area.
So Jessica or Magdala, whoever can see better.
They just fired tear gas again. You can see that.
Right, now we're seeing that on the air.
Sorry, go ahead, John.
Yeah, we're seeing that on the air, and we're seeing police at one end of the street, and then we're seeing the protesters. Are you able to tell if the crowd is in fact dispersing, or are they just backing off?
Yes.
Yes.
The crowd is dispersing for the most part. It has significantly decreased. People are coming into these parking lots where we are right now.
Yes.
But it seems like a lot of people are finally getting the message and trying to get out of this area.
Right, and it's quiet now. A lot of those people, it's not as loud as it was earlier. If you could even hear people in our background, it's a lot more quiet. It might be a few people still lingering right now, but everyone is getting the message to go home.
Did the protesters, did they
quiet.
seem to have an agenda tonight in terms of trying to get to somewhere, maybe the restaurant or the auto dealership that was vandalized last night, or was it just a sense of unrest and unruliness?
So we do want to mention that there were a lot of police officers in this area, 60 to 70 state police officers, other agencies. They were blocking off all of that access to downtown, so no one was getting in that area. They closed that all down to traffic, so they had to take some different routes in this area that we kind of mentioned earlier. And it's kind of some of the same messages that we have heard before, some of the message we've heard escalating, echoing around the country.
Right. And that was the message for today, for most people anyway, was to talk about what's going on in Minneapolis. But unfortunately, that message got lost by a few people who did not want to listen. Even at towards the top of the street here, where you're looking, where the officers might be walking back towards that way, when people got up there and they wanted to keep walking and keep protesting, it was a few people who were throwing water bottles at the police line, and then there were others who were telling them, don't do that, we're not here for that, why are you throwing water bottles? Then you see the fireworks, and then the tear gases came, people dispersed. It was not a good experience, and unfortunately something that was supposed to be peaceful turned out this way, and it wasn't supposed to be. I mean, I was here at 6 o'clock, and speaking to the people who were here, they said their plan was to be peaceful. A lot of them didn't agree with what happened to 5th and Federal yesterday. That was not their plan, but at the end of the day, it was to get the message across with what everyone else in this country wants to do, and that's because of what happened in Minneapolis too. And their message was to not forget the name of George Floyd, and also to raise awareness to what happened, or to the tweet that 5th and Federal did, but at the same time, don't forget what's going on in Minneapolis, and not to forget George Floyd's name. So that was the message, and unfortunately a few people acted out of character, and it lost, the message was lost tonight here in Lynchburg because of that.
But we do want to mention that the police are retreating now, so people are getting that message. You mentioned those dispersing crowds, so people are going home, and that is good news.
And they're going home because of the tear gas. Is that, I mean, that's what it appears on the screen right now. Is that your sense also?
Okay.
Yeah, that appears to be, the police started with over the loudspeaker telling the crowds that they needed to go home. Lynchburg police ordering them to disperse, unlawful assembly. then bringing that line forward of police officers and then firing off that tear gas. And that's what seemed to really be the most effective.
Yes. As Jessica's already said, a lot of it was that warning too. You could hear once the SWAT cars came out, when the lines or when the crowd started walking up, you see from the left or right side of the street, the Bearcat came out directing the crowd to stay away from the